Welcome back to High Floor Football, and we are back from a 2-week break. Life gets in the way, but here at High Floor Football, the best ball summer and the redraft season has just begun. So, as always, I'm here with my co-host Jay Arsh. And Jay, what is going on with you tonight?
Not too much, man. It's a fun transition for me going from doing our dynasty stuff to our best ball stuff. Two of my favorite things. So I'm doing well. I'm happy to talk about it. I was actually joking with my girlfriend before she'd asked if I did any prep for the show, and I was like, not really. But then I was like, except for the 100+ drafts that I've done on Underdog. So yeah, I think I'm prepared to talk about it.
Yeah, I feel like those count as prep, for this. You don't have to study anything. You know from all the underdog drafts that we do. And as always, we do have to, thank our partners at Underdog for being a big part of this show and allowing us to do what we do. And you should definitely go check them out. You got Best Ball Mania out there, $3 million to first prize. Puppy 2 is out. I'm sure there's plenty of more drafts that are coming your way. So go out there, use code HFF when you sign up for your first deposit, and we'll drop a link in the description of this video. So just go down, click that, and enter code HFF when prompted. You will get a 100% match on your first deposit up to $100. All good stuff over there at Underdog. But like we said, this is a best ball episode. So we are in the midst of best ball season. It is a hot best ball summer, and we're gonna break some things down. I recently released my rankings for best ball over on the game day, and I will also put those in the description. Game day fantasy football best ball rankings, tons of good stuff that I have cooking up over there with the team. And what we're gonna do tonight is we are going to go against my top 250 overall rankings over on TGD, and we are going to debate some things. Jay has always found some way to bounce back against my rankings, no matter what form of fantasy football we're playing. And I expect nothing less from him tonight. And then, as we talk, we're going to go into some strategies that we're looking at because each of us has done. I've done around 75 drafts this spring, and I believe Jay said he's done over 100. So we've both done plenty at this point. So we are going to hop right into it, and we might as well start at the top. What is the most popular strategy that you have been rolling with so far in your many drafts?
Well, I'm typically a heavy wide receiver guy, which, a lot of underdog seems to be. That being said, you can kind of zag on that too. And I really think that right now, in particular, like these last, couple weeks, probably a couple weeks after this, I think the running back values in like the second, third round, you're getting guys that I think realistically could be first round picks. So as much as I love to go wide receiver heavy, I am finding myself, sometimes going running back in the second round, sometimes doubling up on running backs in the second, third, and then just going on a wide receiver run for a little while and getting that figured out because, you start 2 running backs, you start 3 wide receivers. Typically you want to, a lot of times flex the wide receiver, I would say, but it is half point PPR. But it just feels like, when you can get one of these receivers that's going in the first, the Jamar Chase and Justin Jefferson obviously going at the top, or, the Cooper Kupp, Tyreek Hill, AJ Brown, Stephon Diggs, one of those guys in the first round, and you can come back with a Nick Chubb, a Ramondre Stevenson, a Derrick Henry, Josh Jacobs, guys that I don't think anyone would blink at if they were going in between like the 12 to 14 range, like right at the end of the first, early second. So I really think this is like an opportunity for that because I think some of these guys are going to climb. The closer we get to the season, when we see, if the Browns really don't bring back Kareem Hunt, and don't add anybody else, and it's just Nick Chubb, or, the Cowboys, Tony Pollard, if it remains Tony Pollard there, he's somebody that'll fly up. So strategically, like I said, I like to go wide receiver heavy, but I mean, I think you kind of have to follow the board sometimes. And I think right now, the running back values in like the second, third rounder are really strong.
Yep.
And even going into like the 6th, 7th, with the J.K. Dobbins, Joe Mixons of them as well, guys that really have that higher upside that are going later. So you can really get boxed out a wide receiver though if you don't get some going first. I'll just right before I hand it back to you. I mean, Hayden Winks, who works for Underdog, he's written the 4 wide receivers before round 7. That's like that's what he's figured is, at least he figures, is the optimal strategy. And you see that really come to fruition a lot, because if you don't load up on wide receivers early, you're looking at the board and you have to reach, you have to find ways to get them, and it doesn't feel good to be reaching down the board to get wide receiver 4s and wide receiver 5s.
There's a spot around the 5th or 6th round where you got guys like Chris Godwin and Brandon Ayuk, and DJ Moore might have fallen there a little bit. Tyler Lockett's there, Jackson Smith-Njigba, Michael Pittman, all those guys. That kind of area, I think that's what we would pretty much term the wide receiver dead zone this year. As a spot where you're not quite sure. And I think at that point, you probably want to have at least 3 good wide receivers. I think that's probably a strategy you probably want to adopt there, because if you're drafting like your second or third guy from that group, things could tend to get a little hairy, especially if you wait a little further down the board and you got guys like Jordan Addison, Mike Evans is down there, George Pickens is down there. So, and then you start getting into like the Gabe Davis and Rashad Bateman, a tier after that, and things start to get a little hairy real quick. But I do think that this is something that we're going to see every year. The running backs in the summer, they're just pushed way down the board. People are waiting on June 1st cuts, and people are waiting on last minute trades, deals to go through. And once we get the more casual fantasy football fan, in these best ball lobbies, the running back values start slowly creeping up the board. And in August, we're probably going to see, all of Christian McCaffrey, Bijan Robinson, Austin Eckler probably off the board in the top 7 or 8, I would imagine. I think Jonathan Taylor and Saquon Barkley will probably find their way into the back of the first round. And I think, the Tony Pollard, Josh Jacobs, Nick Chubb, Derrick Henry, Ramondre group will probably find their way into, the mid-second round at that point. And, and at that point, the value is going to be gone. So it is good to, to get in the summer and, with these guys that are kind of a little bit pushed down the board because of, perceived drop in value, new situations, people not knowing whether they're going to sign veterans off the street, guys like Ezekiel Elliott, Leonard Fournette, they're just floating around out there. Kareem Hunt, they're just floating around. Then they will most likely be on teams by week 1. So yes, you have to keep in mind for that. But for now, it's good to, kind of snag these guys off the ambiguity that you have to roll with. So I'm glad we did that. You want to grab?
I was just going to say, we've already seen it with like Austin Eckler. It was like there was a little bit of that uncertainty of like, oh, he might get traded. Like,
he's pushing around
back?
too.
Like all that. And like, he was going like back into the first, like a little, like you said, making it into the second. Now he's like pretty firmly in like that like 8 to 10 range of the first, I would say, and even earlier, like, because that's where he belongs. If Austin Eckler goes out and does Austin Eckler, he's going to be putting up a ton of points. It's just that little bit of uncertainty, like during these times where it's like, where us addicts and like degenerates are drafting, we're just taking any sort of like little edge we can get or feel like we can get. So
anything that we perceive as value, we're going to try and take advantage of.
For sure.
All right, so let's jump into these rankings a little bit. Why don't you start us off? Who is the guy in my tier 1 that you kind of didn't feel like I was right on?
Well, it's tough to say not right, because I also really like him too, but it's Bijan Robinson for me. I mean, you have him 5th overall, going RB2, which ADP wise, he's also going off the board as the RB2. Around
I think he's
8.
down there at 7.5, right?
8.9 now. So
Okay.
I mean, he even went down another spot. So he's going like the 108. So I mean, it's not anything drastic, but I mean, these are the picks of like these elite players where you want to try and get it right one way or the other. I do like Bijan a lot. I just, like I was kind of alluding to with that strategy that I'm seeing right now, or at least the ADP that I'm seeing right now, is that he's positioned for you, which again, these are they're fluid rankings. but it's right ahead of, Cooper Kupp, Tyreek Hill, Eckler, AJ Brown, Diggs, some of those guys. I prefer those wide receivers there just because I know right now with how it's at least set up with the ADP, I can come back and I can get a Nick Chubb, a Josh Jacobs, a Ramondre Stevenson, who I'm super high on, and so that for me is like when I'm thinking of the difference between Ramondre, Chubb, Jacobs, that tier of running backs is going around T. Higgins, Devontae Smith, Jalen Waddle, those type of receivers. For me, I don't see, and it pains me to ever say anything bad about Devontae Smith because I don't have anything bad to say, but I don't think he belongs where he goes in these underdog drafts right now. I don't think T. Higgins does either. I don't think that, Jalen Waddle a little bit, but I mean, I don't think that those guys who are probably to me borderline wide receiver ones, probably more so high end wide receiver twos, I would rather take these like workhorse running backs, like that I know are just going to have this like smash role that like have a chance to maybe be like the RB1, or at least in contention for it. And so when I can get like come out of those first two rounds with say Cooper Kupp and Nick Chubb, that's more appealing to me than maybe doing like a Bijan, Jalen Waddle or Bijan, Devontae Smith. And Devontae Smith clearly, I think at least, and I think T. Higgins as well, because underdog or because best ball's so, stack oriented, you want to build these team stacks and stuff. Devontae Smith going around Jalen Hurts makes some sense. People are trying to get them in that same range, and also add them on with AJ Brown. So I love Bijan Robinson. I'm very high on him too. I don't think that you were wrong to have him RB2. I just prefer some of those wide receivers there.
Yeah, I think it's interesting because you obviously have to look at everything from a strategy standpoint, right? So you have to be able to forecast what you want to do. Like you said, if you're going to go Bijan Robinson, the optimal thing to do would be to go wide receiver in the second round. Thinking of a Chris Olave, a Jalen Waddle, Devontae Smith, T. Higgins, like you said.
Mm-hmm.
Admittedly, it doesn't feel great to go with that, and you have your wide receiver one basically be a de facto wide receiver two. I get that. So what I've been doing when I land the fourth, fifth, sixth pick, and I go towards a Bijan look, is I'm gonna start going heavy running back there. I can't speak.
Sure. Yeah.
So, for me, I've seen a ton of Bijan, Tony Pollard starts for myself, Bijan Chubb, Bijan, Josh Jacobs. And I'm completely fine with that because it allows me to basically fill up on a position for the time being. And knowing that I have two stud running backs at the beginning allows me to pummel the wide receiver position for the next 4 to 5 rounds.
It is freedom
And
when you can just
so it's nice. So it's nice for that. Going back to what Hayden Winks said, if it's optimal that you want 4 wide receivers in the first 7 rounds, well, that works out perfectly with this strategy. And you can, if a quarterback falls, when I'm employing a strategy like this, tight end is going to be something I tend to toss by the wayside because if I'm focusing so much on wide receiver, I definitely want to get in those wide receivers because they have the more optimal outcomes than, the tight ends down the board are going to have. So, I'm happy to pummel wide receiver, in the case of, doing a Bijan, Tony Pollard, Bijan, Josh Jacobs, Nick Chubb stack. The option's going to arise for me to then take, a DK Metcalf in the early third. Maybe a Drake London in the late fourth. You can then go Jerry Jeudy, Christian Kirk, DJ Moore, guys like that. And then you can have a number of suitable wide receivers by the time you get to round 6, where we see that wide receiver dead zone that I was talking about earlier. So I think there's a couple options there. No, it's not quite optimal, in terms of what a lot of people are going to do. But I think we saw that, drafting the running backs early that were available was a smart move last year. It certainly worked out, drafting Christian McCaffrey early. And I think it'll work out again because I do think that Bijan is going to see an extremely heavy role in Atlanta. We already know what Arthur Smith wants to do. The fact that Tyler Algier is there is not a huge deterrent. He's going to get his due here and there, but Bijan just has the ability to crank out spike weeks every single week, and I think he's going to get plenty of opportunities to do that, given how high they drafted him, given the fact that they think they're in a position to win their division. There's enough elite talents around there that teams are not going to stack the box, against Atlanta every down. So I do think that Bijan is a fine play at 4, 5, 6, any of those spots. If you can get him at 8, that's great, because it'll open you up to taking maybe like a CD Lamb, taking like a possibly a Devontae Adams that falls, maybe a Garrett Wilson falls, possibly even a Amon Ra. So the later you can get a guy like Bijan in the first round, great. If he falls, great. But I really don't have a problem taking him early either.
Yeah, totally. I don't hate like having him that you have him that early. I don't think that he doesn't belong there. Like you said, I think he's going to be plenty productive. It's just the strategy right now, and by August that could change. Like some of these running backs could push up the board, that could change. So that was the first one that kind of stood out to me, just because again, not that different. I just take him a little bit later because of the strategic part of it. Going down a little bit, looking at the quarterbacks. So you have them all right next to each other, right in kind of that 17 to 19 range, which makes sense in the second round. So with Jalen Hurts, what order do you have them in? Jalen Hurts, Josh Allen, Patrick Mahomes. And so, yeah, do you have a certain preference on which one of those three? Does it kind of depend for you on what you think you can do in terms of like stacking them a little bit? Because for me, at least, Jalen is somebody who you pretty much have to, pay high value for to stack him with his teammates, because it's AJ Brown in the first, it's Devontae Smith in the second, and then Dallas Goedert goes relatively early too for tight ends. I'm not looking at his ADP right now.
The 6th.
Yeah, it goes pretty early. So if you go with a quarterback early already in Hurts, getting that tight end early too in like 6th, 7th round, I mean, that's a lot of capital at two positions, at quarterback and tight end, where you're starting, one player.
Yeah.
So Jalen's harder to stack.
Yeah, in terms of stacking with Hurts specifically, something I've done is something I found myself doing in a couple spots. I haven't done it every time I've drafted Jalen, but typically if I draft Jalen, I like to put him with AJ Brown and then kind of employ almost a zero or a hero wide receiver or running back strategy, and then draft DeAndre Swift a little bit later on. I pretty much like you said, getting Hurts, Brown, Goddard is really difficult given how much optimal lineup capabilities you're giving up in that sense. So I don't know if it's worth the sacrifice that you have to pay. I'd rather do DeAndre Swift. He goes in the 8th round, 9th round. So he's the perfect guy. If you're starting off zero running back, he's a guy that I'm perfectly happy to bring in as that guy. And I have him. He's a little bit more down the list for me. I'm looking for him. Can't
yeah, but I totally agree with you. When I do,
there he is. RB26.
It's pretty much always with AJ Brown. I take AJ Brown in the first, and then I see Hurts in the second, and I think I'm going to make this happen. I don't always do it. I mean, sometimes I'll just not want to spend as early of a pick on quarterback. But to be honest, as much as I love Devontae Smith, I don't have that much Devontae Smith, Jalen Hurts together.
Yeah, no, this year it's hard. This year it's hard with Hurts. Yeah. He's crawled up into the early third, late second. It's tough because you know how I am with Devontae Smith. He's very highly ranked for me. I have him at 25th overall. He's my wide receiver 13. He's right outside the top. And truthfully, I expect him to finish there again this year. I don't have any problem with that. But the cost in best ball that you are associating with a literal wide receiver 2 on his own team, there's the range of outcomes is a little bit too uncomfortable for me. So It's nearly impossible to stack the three of them together. If you're able to stack the three of them together, it's like Nirvana.
Yeah.
And it'll, but the board has to fall so perfectly for you. Like ideally it's
Well, the best way to do it is if you double up on those two receivers, because then
mhm,
Hurts can drop, because then there might be other people in your draft that aren't as interested in Jalen as they might typically be because they don't have
right.
Smith or Brown.
Right. Going back to your original question in terms of the quarterbacks, I don't really have a preference here. Jalen is my QB1 simply because he was first in points per game among quarterbacks last year. I think there's a relatively good chance that he does lead them again this year. Mahomes is an alien. Mahomes is going to do what Mahomes does. You're always going to be perfectly fine if Mahomes is your QB, no matter who he's throwing to, and pretty similar with Josh Allen because we know he can use his legs. We know he can toss the ball a mile. And now we know that he has a slot wide receiver hybrid tight end in Dalton Kincaid, who should contribute right away and have better hands than Gabriel Stonehands Davis did. So I think all of them are really good options. They're at 17, 18, and 19 for me. So they're kind of in that mid second. And I think you're always going to have to pay up a little more in best ball given the spike potential of these three quarterbacks. Lamar Jackson is a guy that I think has a really good chance of joining them.
Yeah.
And he's just a little bit further down my rankings at 30th overall. Like I'm perfectly fine if you want to go wide receiver in the first two rounds and then take Lamar in the third. I think there's options there. I don't think you have to stack Lamar with anybody. If you're really that concerned, just throw one of the three wide receivers that inhabit the 9th and 10th rounds in Bateman, Flowers, or Odell. Whichever one you think is going to be the guy, then take him. DeAndre Hopkins is also a possibility there. Like you can take him. A lot of people have laid off him because he literally doesn't have a team. So I think there's a lot of options when it comes to the quarterback. So I do think that attacking quarterbacks early in best ball is your key to success a lot of the time.
Yeah, I mean, so I think, Allen, Mahomes, Hurts are the big three. I think they are.
Yep.
And there's no real debate with that. But I draft a lot more Lamar Jackson, Joe Burrow, Justin Herbert in the fourth, just because, like you said about Lamar, I mean, Lamar is like a toss away from being with those big three. He has another big season. I mean, there's no ceiling for really like what he can do, and we know what the ceiling is, and it's as high as those guys. I do like to stack Lamar. It's tough with Mark Andrews, and that's for sure. They're so close. They're one spot. Calvin Ridley right now is the one separating the two of them. But really, unless you're at the turn, it's like nearly impossible to do it. And even when
you have to pay up. You have to pay. You literally have to pay up. You have to reach for Lamar and then take Andrews on the reach around.
Well, and even if you're doing that, you're reaching on ADP, which who cares? Yeah. I mean, who cares if you want to reach on ADP? ADP doesn't matter, whatever you think works. But it's tough because you find yourself then, which I've done a lot because I'm a big Lamar and Mark fan, is that I'll try it all the time. Like I'll do something, I'll try and stack them, and then I'm like, what? I have one tight end, one quarterback, and like one running back or receiver. And it's a tough build to like work around at that point because you either have to like get your run on receiver, you have to like you're building like more of like a balanced thing, which is good, but it's a little bit tougher. You're not stronger in like one area. I really like where Mark Andrews is going. So just on that Lamar topic, I mean, I love taking Mark in the third round. I think he's a great value because Kelsey goes so early, and I think it's really Kelsey, Mark, and everyone else. But Lamar, I mean, I like Rashad Bateman out of the three receivers, like significantly more than Zay Flowers and Odell. I'm still in on Bateman. And then the one that I really love with a Lamar is even if you go, semi-early tight end, but if say you don't at all and you're just tacking on three tight ends late, which is a strategy that I tend to like to do with my quarterbacks, just latch them on to like a couple of tight ends late. Lamar Jackson and Isaiah Likely in like the 18th round is interesting to me because Isaiah Likely, in my opinion, is a
one injury away.
He
One
is
injury away.
well, and he's a spike week. Like
Yeah.
he is like he could do nothing any other week. So you have him in like regular redraft. It's not that fun. You don't know when to play him. You have him in best ball. Isaiah Likely could pop off for like a 2-touchdown game,
Yep.
and you're like,
Same
oh,
with Devin
I have Isaiah
Duvernay.
Likely.
He's
Yeah,
another one who's
exactly.
just sneaky.
And well, and like what you said, I mean, I don't want to imagine a Mark injury because I love the man, but Mark goes down, Isaiah Likely is like right up in that top tier of tight ends.
And we saw that. We saw that last year.
Yeah, I think adding him late is like, I mean, it's you sometimes have to reach on him a little bit too, like in the 17th instead of that last 18th, because he's a kind of a popular pick. I feel like when it gets down to those gross tight ends, because everyone's thinking the same thing. They're like, at least this guy's got upside. Like he's an athlete, he's in a good offense, and he's an insurance policy. So I like him a lot. Just sticking on the quarterbacks really quick, because I mean, Fields is tough. I like where Fields goes, and I would almost say like what you said about Lamar with Fields, where I don't feel as much pressure to stack him. I like to get him with DJ Moore. If you can't, though, there's plenty of like late options. I mean, you could wait a long time and still get like a Darnell Mooney and Claypool
is like a very, very late guy that I've been
Claypool
finding
goes
myself drafting a lot.
Yeah, like 16th, 17th round. I mean, like you can just add him on to Claypool quietly too. Kind of like lived through this, like we're all out on him, and now the Bears didn't actually add that much to the wide receiver room, and now he's like still in a decent position.
Right.
And then Justin Herbert, I mean, like Herbert doesn't run, like those top guys. That's clearly like, going to be the reason his ceiling can't reach as high. But I mean, all the options right around him. I mean, you have Austin Eckler going in the first, you got Keenan in the third. Mike Williams in the third. And then I love Gerald Everett late, who goes off the board as I think tight end 20 off the top of my head.
He is.
So he goes off the board around tight end 20. And he's another one where it's like everybody was mocking the Chargers tight end throughout draft season. And then they didn't take one. And everyone's acting like they took one. Like, you know what I mean? Everyone's like acting like there's like competition, and there's not. It's Gerald Everett and Parham. And so I love him late as well. And then Burrow, obviously, you can do a lot of fun stuff with Burrow if, the two receivers, Joe Mixon goes like not too far after him. You can stack up like that Kansas City, Cincinnati game with Burrow.
Yeah, I've been doing that a ton.
Yeah, so that's a fun one too. And just to touch on too, while we're kind of in this range, that wide receiver dead zone you were talking about with the with like Jerry Jeudy and Keenan Allen and Christian Watson, Drake London, DJ Moore. My guy in that range that like I'm kind of taking all the time, which I'd like to kind of hear your thoughts on, because I haven't really like talked to anyone about it. I take Terry McLaurin there all the time. Like I just think I feel so much more comfortable with like if I have one of those first receivers like AJ Brown or Stephon Diggs or Tyreek Hill, and I'm looking at this and I need like my wide receiver too. I love Jerry Jeudy. I just don't feel as comfortable with him as like my wide receiver too, though. It's very volatile.
No, I don't
like,
either.
Who knows what's going to happen with him? I think the upside's there, but there's definitely a downside. Drake London too. I love Drake London, but there's a chance that there's not that jump that we want there to be. Terry McLaurin, at least like he's boring, he's stable.
But you know what he's gonna do.
But you know he's gonna give you like 1,000 to 1,100 yards and like some decent touchdown upside, and especially with if Jacoby Brissett gets to play a little bit, or if Sam Howell is better than we think. So he's kind of been like my main target in like that wide receiver dead zone, and I totally agree with you. You look at that part of the board, and you're just like, what do I do here? And for me, I think, pivot to McLaurin a lot.
I think McLaurin's a good shot. I like the Washington skill position guys as a whole this year.
Mm-hmm.
They have a very advantageous Week 17 matchup against the 49ers. Remember, for all the strong that the 49ers defense was last year, they were really susceptible to giving up chunk plays to the wide receiver position. And that just went kind of under the radar all season long. I attacked that in prop bets all playoffs long. I loved betting on that 49ers, defense to give up yards to the wide receiver position, because they did it all the time, because everything else was just so strong, and they would inevitably just give up yards to there. So I do like McLaurin for that reason. I think another guy in that area that I've been looking at um, is where is it? Oh, yes, Christian Kirk. And I think Kirk goes a little bit after. I have him ranked up because, like, I'm very, very big fan of Christian Kirk.
Mm-hmm.
And I think Kirk is a guy. Look, the dead zone is an area that I'm going to target safety more than ceiling. And I know, that's rare for best ball. We're targeting spikes. But I think there's a very good chance that Christian Kirk is just going to quietly put up another 1,100 yard season. No matter what Calvin Ridley does, because I don't think the two are getting the same targets. Like, they're not competing for the same target share. I think Ridley is going to more or less take over all of the Zay Jones workload, as well as some of the Marvin Jones workload. And Christian Kirk is going to do his thing. He's going to stay in the slot where he always works out of, and he works out of best. And I think he's going to be really good from there. And I think Kirk is a really good value option if you're kind of, trapped on wide receiver. I think Tyler Lockett is another guy who's going to be going in that dead zone area. And I think, you can easily take these guys are mostly round 5 guys. I think round 4, I think Terry McLaurin is by far the best option you have there. Keenan, if he drops, I've seen him drop to that dead zone area before. Sure. I think that's fine. Christian Watson makes me nervous for all the spike week potential we saw from him. We saw him do it for such a short period of time. And the quarterback change, I know everyone's saying, Love was decent with Watson when he had him. I don't know. Something has rubbed me the wrong way about Christian Watson ever since he was drafted. I mostly just stayed far away from him last year.
I would probably start considering Christian Watson like 20 spots after ADP. Like, if Christian Watson was going in, like, where is he going? In the 40s or something?
I have him at 38. I think he's going a little bit.
You have him at 38 and he's going at 40. So I would be more comfortable if Christian Watson was going in like the 70s. So almost 30 spots after ADP, which is, bear with me here. That's like Treylon Burks, Deontay Johnson range. Like, I don't think Christian Watson has done enough to like be in a different ballpark than like those players for me. Like, I like Treylon Burks still. I mean, he's similar type of situation, honestly, as like a Christian Watson. Watson showed us a little bit more. He showed us the bigger plays, but I mean, it's complete like quarterback change. It's, he did have the big weeks, the spike weeks. He was, kind of consistently giving us spike weeks, which is, goes against the definition. But yeah, dude, I'm not as high on him either. So I don't really think I've drafted like any Christian Watson, and it might just bite me, And then as you like to keep going down the board, someone who we were talking about before, and kind of going on that running back tangent again of just what these values are. I mean, you're pretty much in lockstep with Joe Mixon. You have an RB18, 56 overall. He's going 55th.
Yeah, but he's gonna climb up my board.
Dude, he could legit be going where Ramondre and Chubb and Derrick Henry are going.
I think the market is dying for a correction on Joe Mixon. I think it's going to happen really soon. So I've been finding myself drafting him.
Oh, dude,
that like round 5 area.
I've been pounding Joe Mixon with the idea that
phrasing.
I don't even care. With the idea that like, yeah, dude, if you're able to build, like, I always think about this too. When you talk to a lot of people who are like, oh, you're drafting in May, or you're drafting in June, or you're doing whatever. It's the same with like dynasty startups when people say that. It's like, isn't it so risky? And it's like, it's risky both ways. Like, it's not like just like, oh, we don't know what's going to happen. Like, it's also like, well, we could think we know what's going to happen, and that's not correct. And like with Joe Mixon, for months, it was they're going to cut him, or they're going to draft somebody, or they're going to do this. So that was why his ADP was down. Right. Then that didn't happen, really. They had drafted Chase Brown in the 6th round, and they still have him on the roster. And, like, nothing has really changed. Like, his ADP is, like, not really changing. And, like, I saw, actually, just before we got on, I was just on Twitter. I don't remember who tweeted it, but somebody was kind of saying, like, can you guess where these free agents are going to land? Like, and it was, like, a Fournette, Kareem Hunt, and someone else, probably Zeke. And like a ton of the comments are Cincinnati, and people are still saying that. And I'm not going to say that's wrong. Like, who knows what's going to happen? If that happens, Kareem Hunt goes to Cincinnati or something, sure. Like, Joe Mixon will probably drop ADP, like, probably not be a great pick that we were drafting him early as, like, you know, RB 15 to 18 range, whatever he is. If that doesn't happen, though, I mean, this guy's in like one of the best offenses in football, and Samaje Perine is gone. So, who was like the problem? so, like, I don't really get it. I've been drafting a ton of Joe Mixon, and like, kind of my point that we were talking about in the beginning. If I do go, and it's not really zero RB because Mixon goes in the fourth, fifth round, but if you rattle off like an early wide receiver start, you get like 3 wide receivers to, your first 3 picks, and then Joe Mixon's kind of your anchor, and he does end up climbing ADP later on, you're going to have some like super teams that are going to look like that in August, where you're like, oh my God, I have this RB1 who I got in the 4th, 5th round. So
yeah, I'm thinking the same thing about a guy like Dalvin Cook. It's another guy who's a very ambiguous situation right now, where it's, a will he, won't we, or will he or will he not with Minnesota, and everyone assumes he's going to get cut. The people are saying the Jets are suitors, people are saying the Cowboys are suitors. Both of those things would be near death sentences to the running backs that currently inhabit the top spots in those areas. I don't think Dalvin Cook is leaving Minnesota, truthfully. I think Minnesota is in a playoff window. I think it's borderline idiocy for them to consider getting rid of him at this juncture. Just restructure his contract, do whatever you need to keep him. But if they care about the fact that they just won 13 games last season, or 12 games, whatever it was, there is a really good argument to be made to keep the guy who is, one of the best running backs and, pure running backs in football, and who has been, dealing with shoulder injury after shoulder injury after shoulder injury, and he's finally healthy. He says he's as healthy as he's been in 3 seasons. So, for me, I've been drafting I may have Dalvin Cook down, at RB21 right now, but that doesn't reflect, where I actually would have him ranked were the situation in Minnesota to resolve itself. That's just a holding position. I have 20% Dalvin Cook. I'm fully on board with taking him, later on in the drafts as he falls. Whenever he falls, I'm picking him because we know what he can be. Even in these new situations, I think that Dalvin Cook goes in wherever he goes. I think Dalvin Cook's the starting running back.
Well,
so
yeah, I mean, contrary to my Joe Mixon rant, I'm not taking as much Dalvin Cook, and I understand like all the things that you're saying, and I think that it could be true. And Dalvin's somebody who I've liked in the past, and so it's for me one of those where I'm feeling like this is going to bite me in the ass, one way or the other. Like, I'm just not taking him. And honestly, what scares me more about Dalvin is the Miami rumors, because that is a backfield that I have been drafting a ton of. I draft a lot of Raheem Mostert and Jeff Wilson. I actually don't ever draft A-Chain, but I do draft a lot of Mostert and a lot of Wilson, and I kind of think their ADP is also staying extremely low based on, well, the draft pick of A-Chain, but also these rumors of maybe Dalvin Cook or somebody else going to Miami. I just thought it was weird. Miami, like, kind of, in my opinion at least, made almost a priority to bring back like all their running backs, like right when free agency started, which I thought was like a little bizarre that they brought back like every single one of them. So I don't see them like really adding a running back as much as like everybody else does. I wouldn't argue with you that he stays in Minnesota. I don't know. They paid Alexander Mattison a good amount, brought him back. I thought that was weird.
$4 million a year
for a running back. That's not bad. I mean, Rashad Penny gets paid like $600,000. Like, like that's like, I don't know. I'm not. That wasn't a shot at you.
Rashad Penny has never been healthy. Rashad Penny's never been healthy once. There's a little bit of a difference here.
I'm just saying for free agent running backs, like Alexander Mattison got paid like a decent amount for a free agent running back. I mean, David Montgomery makes like $6 million a year, and he's done a lot more. I did
Really?
think it was weird when
Has he?
Minnesota posted that banner on their Twitter page without Dalvin Cook and with Alexander Madison. I did think that was weird, and I hate to read that into that, but it is what it
Well,
is.
yeah, we'll see what happens there. I just want to move on to tight ends before we wrap things up here, and I want to know kind of what is your strategy on tight end. Assuming that you're not taking, assuming you don't take a Travis Kelce or Mark Andrews in the first two, maybe 3 rounds if Andrews falls. What's your tight end plan? And really, is there a spot to like kind of hammer a tight end in like the top 8 or 9 ADP, or is the move to just go triple tight end later on in the draft?
Well, if I don't take Kelsey or Andrews, and I'm gonna get like one of the elite tight ends, it's pretty much Pitts. And I wait on him, and I think Pitts is like an awesome value right now. He's going 65th overall, and like sometimes he drops. What is that? 65th? It's a sixth round. Seventh,
Sixth.
sixth, yeah. Like right around that range. I mean, he's like a great value in there. Let me see like kind of where he's going around. The other like top guys, I mean, I'm not as high on Hawkinson as a lot of others seem to be this year. Like I kind of take some of those wide receivers. Like I said, he's going right around Terry McLaurin. So that's somebody that I kind of like take in that range a little bit more
Yeah, I have
often.
McLaurin I have a McLaurin higher as well.
Yeah, and then not as much Kittle. I just kind of like the range of players in there as well. Like that's kind of the Joe Mixon, J.K. Dobbins, JSN, Brandon Ayuk. I don't take as much of him. So pretty much it's like it's Kelsey and Andrews, and then I'll wait a little bit. I'll take a Kyle Pitts. I really only take like the Dallas Goederts, and I actually don't draft Darren Waller really at all in the range that he's going.
I have been a little more because I think his ceiling is really high.
Yeah, that's fair. I mean, I did a lot more, especially during like the super flex
Okay.
best ball tournaments that were going on, but especially like still now. But I mean, I think Deshaun Watson's like a crazy value. I know that I'm kind of like, I don't know, I've been kind of saying that all offseason in different things on our shows and in our dynasty leagues.
Yeah,
And
we both
everything.
have. We both have.
I love Deshaun Watson, and like I don't love Deshaun Watson.
Not as
I
a
love Deshaun
person,
Watson's,
not as a
I love
person.
Deshaun Watson's value
Relax.
as QB9. I mean, I think it's like talking again about like a hop, skip, and a jump to like the elite class. I mean, would anybody be surprised if Deshaun Watson like came back and was really good again? So Deshaun Watson and David Njoku is like a very popular stack that I have because he's been good at like targeting the tight ends, and Njoku's good. They extended him. He kind of had his little mini breakout last offseason. So I do a lot of that. Evan Ingram, I really only draft if I have Trevor Lawrence. If I take Trevor Lawrence, I'll like mix in an Evan Ingram if I can. But yeah, I mean, it's really like you said, Kelsey, Andrews, Pitts, and then Njoku or Ingram if I have their quarterbacks. If not, I mean, I really think there's like a lot of tight ends late, like a guy who's his ADP is finally climbing up, but it wasn't forever. And like, I mean, I could be wrong about this, but I think Tyler Conklin is like a super value right now. He goes like 16th to 18th round. Yeah, see, maybe I'm like on an island here, but it's like, I don't know. Rodgers has been like pretty good to his tight ends. I mean, hasn't had like really like elite players there, but he's been pretty good to him. I didn't see the Jets. Like, I mean, who's the rookie? Jeremy Ruckert, the second year guy.
Yeah.
It's him and CJ Uzama, and like I don't know, Tyler Conklin's like been kind of good, like sneaky good the past 2 years.
Yeah, but so is Uzama. I actually have Conklin and Uzama ranked back to back. And until I saw a thing about Jeremy Ruckert earlier today.
I saw that little blurb,
and so he's gonna probably sneak back into my top 250. I have Uzama and Conklin at 206 and 207, TE 26 and 27 respectively. But yeah, I mean they're there. I don't know if I expect Rodgers to be able to find them at a high enough rate given all the people in that offense. There's just so many people in the Jets offense. You have to think about Hardman, Lazard, Corey Davis is still there.
You're
Garrett
naming
Wilson.
guys that don't matter though. Like Mecole Hardman does not matter.
Are we gonna pretend that CJ Uzama or Tyler Conklin matter?
they play a position like Nicole Hardman is the wide receiver 4, maybe 5, depending on like who's out there. I think that like one of these guys is going to be on the field a lot. Whether, like I said in the beginning, I could be wrong and I could just be taking the wrong swing, and maybe it's Uzama. You know, it's kind of like the Alberto Dulcich last year. You know, people could be swinging on the wrong guy. I could be taking the wrong swing.
I think it's whoever is the new I forget. It's Nathaniel Hackett. Whoever Nathaniel Hackett likes.
Conklin's got that long hair, man. Did you see Nathaniel Hackett when he met Greg Dulcich last year? Have you seen that video? No. Oh, dude, he is like so weird about Dulcich's hair. And like Conklin's also got that long flow. He's got the lettuce to match with Rodgers. He's got like the attitude. I don't know, man. I like Conklin. The range that I'm kind of skipping on a lot of these tight ends is like, and I know he's kind of, you like him a lot, but I mean, just I don't draft any like Dalton Kincaid, Dalton Schultz, Cole Kmet, like those guys. I'd rather wait and get like Juwan Johnson, Gerald Everett, Tyler Conklin, Isaiah Likely in the 18th. Like some of those guys have like similar floors and like similar upside to me, and they're going like way later. So
I know I said never again, but what about Irv Smith?
I never said never again.
I said never again. I said never again.
I don't know. I'm like okay with him. I mean, I don't like his ADP, so that's the problem for me. Is like
that's fair.
He was
inflated because he's in Cincy.
Well, he was going much further before the draft, and then they didn't draft a tight end, and now like and because dude, people are just obsessed with like stacking the Bengals, which makes sense. Like, so I mean, Irv Smith goes a little bit higher, but I don't love taking him ahead of like Juwan Johnson and Gerald Everett. Those guys are just like better players.
Yeah, Juwan Johnson's interesting because I think the Saints really like him, but Foster Moreau complicates things so much. But we'll see what happens there.
I don't know. Maybe he could. I have added some Foster Moreau late because like the other thing, just for anybody listening, clearly, I mean, you want to try and be different in best ball, obviously. Like you want to, not have the same team as everybody. So, I mean, I have mixed in some Foster Moreaus because, I think that the typical stack is, adding a Juwan Johnson or, what is your thoughts on Taysom Hill? Because I wasn't drafting any Taysom Hill. And recently, if I'm doing the wait and draft 3 tight ends, I've been like, all right, I'll take Taysom Hill.
Yeah, that's the only scenario where I find myself drafting Taysom Hill is if I completely punt tight end and he's around there and I'm okay with it. I don't need to stack him with anybody. Like we know he can be independent of himself and run the ball and catch the ball
and he's also a beneficiary of if Kamara actually gets suspended. Like that, like is a little boost to a Taysom Hill.
I think Taysom Hill's the main beneficiary of one of the main beneficiaries of the Kamara suspension because he'll get mixed in at the goal line.
Totally. I don't love exactly. And it's perfect for best ball because it's really like, again, I don't want to roster take fucking Taysom Hill in like a dynasty league or a redraft league or whatever. But if I don't have to worry about when Taysom Hill decides to like have his like 30-point outings, it's perfect for best ball. So I don't love his ADP, but sometimes if I have to like mix him in with the 3 tight ends, I like that. Just one more guy in like the late tight ends that I have been drafting a decent amount of because I like Geno Smith. Geno Smith is a great value, in my opinion, as well as going QB 16. And that offense is just like loaded with players at this point. And I'm kind of surprised it hasn't climbed. I think it is going to climb a little bit. He's going like a spot ahead of Rodgers. But I've drafted a decent amount of Noah Fant late in like the 17th, 18th round, and you're rolling your eyes. It's getting gross down here. I mean, we're talking about some of the gross players, but it's like, dude, I don't know. I mean, it's the athletic profile. Like, he's a guy who's been productive.
Noah Fant down at tight end 33. Man, he's below Jelani Woods and Hunter Henry. Speaking of Jelani Woods,
I take some Hunter Henry, man. Oh, I was just gonna go the other way. I was like, I touch some Hunter Henry sometimes. like I don't know. What do you feel about how? I feel like Gesicki's going like way too much higher.
I have zero. You know how I feel about Mike Gesicki.
I
You
don't
know
get,
how I
I mean,
feel
I
about
don't love either of them, him or Hunter Henry, but I don't really understand the gap. Like they're going like 20 spots away from each other, and I'm like, I don't know who's gonna be the guy. Like if I had to pick who's gonna have a better season there, I don't know. I mean, I think one of them is gonna actually be all right because Bill O'Brien has had success with the tight ends. Does
Yeah,
have
nah,
success with the tight ends.
I didn't even Mike Gesicki didn't even oh, he did make it into my rankings. What's he doing all the way up at tight end 23? That's not right. That doesn't look right. Nah, I'd rather have some other guys way ahead of Mike Gesicki. Trey McBride comes to mind.
How do you feel
Um,
about our boy switching back different positions here? But we have our Christian Kirk, Calvin Ridley bet. How do you feel? Because it's just an interesting position. Calvin Ridley's going high. He goes high in
yeah,
best ball.
he's
It's
but
going like the third
it's
round.
it's a ceiling. It's a ceiling play.
Yeah,
He's a little bit too expensive for me. I haven't taken much.
yeah. Because I
I haven't
drafted a
taken
decent
much.
amount of
He's
him,
too
but
expensive.
yeah, he was going a little bit later, and now he's like right
Like
there in the
I
third
have him
round.
ranked at 35, wide receiver 17. Like I have him ranked there because I truly think, I think that's well within his range of outcomes. And I think it's probably where he lands. And truthfully, I'd rather have him over guys like Amari and Christian Watson and Keenan Allen, Drake London. But the price is just too expensive. I like to fade this entire, 16 to 20 group of wide receivers, like the Debos, I like to fade everyone but Amari in this range. I
Mhm.
take a lot of Amari and I pretty much fade everyone else because I just don't trust anyone else in this range. So, it's tough. Ridley is, a guy I could see finishing very high. I could also see it bottoming out.
Yeah. And then kind of just kind of in this late ADP, some of these running backs, just a couple guys that I'll like note that I like taking a lot. Like if you're kind of adding like that RB5, I take a lot of Chuba Hubbard,
Ew.
Kenneth Gainwell, Raheem Mostert, RB5, Jerome
I take a lot
Ford.
of Jeff Wilson. I don't like Mostert.
I take
I
a
don't
lot
like
of Jeff
Mostert.
Wilson too.
I like Jeff Wilson much better. Tank Bigsby is a guy that
Hmm.
I'm fine taking late.
What was your sound on Chuba Hubbard there? What was your deal there?
Yeah,
Yeah, I don't love Chuba Hubbard either,
I
but
don't
I
think
feel
he's
like he's in
good.
a interesting situation. Like
But it's
I
not
don't think.
good.
I mean,
He's not good.
that hasn't mattered for plenty of people.
That's fair. Fair. Jerome Ford. Jerome Ford is a guy.
I like Jerome Ford a
If
lot.
Cleveland doesn't bring in anybody, Jerome Ford's a guy who could play 3 downs. Um, he's a guy at that running back position that I like. I found myself taking a little bit of Tyjae Spears late,
Mm.
when he pops up there, but he's not a guy I love. I have him ranked pretty far down. If he falls, I'm willing to take him.
Yeah, I drafted.
Late. Like I just can't stop myself from tapping Clyde Edwards-Helaire sometimes. Sorry, that's
Whoa.
a very, very scary for me to admit.
Okay, well on that note, on even later, one of the guys who I've been taking a little bit real far down is Pierre Strong. I dabble in some Pierre Strong just because
I do
I
too.
mean I like
I do too.
Ramondre a lot. I do think somebody else is going to be like in the mix. I don't think it's going to really impact Ramondre, but I think he's kind of the next guy there.
There's
And
one other guy that I tap in that round 17, 18 range at the running back position.
let me
It's
guess.
Cordarrelle Patterson.
Oh, dude, I like Cordarrelle too. I was taking him a lot before they drafted Bijan. Like before the draft, he was still down there, and I was like, huh. Like, cause dude,
Huh.
who's a spike week guy more than Cordarrelle
Yeah.
Patterson?
He's
Like,
just
he
a
could have
spike week
a
waiting to
big
happen,
game.
dude.
Like, and dude, the fact that and I'll actually talk about this next guy next, which goes with this, but Atlanta did like nothing at the wide receiver position aside from adding Mac Hollins, who's another guy that I draft a lot of. And I drafted a lot of him in the Superflex drafts as well, because I did a lot of like late ones where I would take like a set, or what was it? Because 1920, because there was 20 rounds in that one.
Right.
Taylor Heineke, Mac Hollins, just to end this thing out. Like, who knows, man?
So disgusting.
Who knows though?
That is
Okay.
so disgustingly
Okay, but
bad.
come on
You
this
disgust
journey.
me.
come on this journey with me here.
No,
Can you
I
see
will not. I will not come on this journey with you.
Can you see by week 17, Desmond Ritter's bench situation? Heineke is just slinging.
Why are you making our listeners listen to this?
Doesn't even care. And Mac Hollins, who had like an actually decent season last year, is the wide receiver 2 on the roster. Who is the wide receiver 3 outside of Drake London and
I
Mac
don't know.
Hollins
I don't think Arthur Smith cares.
Exactly. So who knows?
I don't think Arthur Smith cares.
Like Mac Hollins, honestly, for me, for a while was like my I'm gonna get different guy. And then I saw people like on Twitter like being like Mac Hollins in the 18th or whatever, and I was like, damn it, they're catching on.
They're not catching on. They're just stupid. Mac Hollins coming in at 248th overall for me, wide receiver 106.
Well, another guy in that vein of
what's wrong with
late 18 guys who this is going to probably make you even grosser. But as Richie James for me, I think is interesting as well. Actually had a decent season last year.
At least Richie James is up in 218 for me. But yeah, the KC thing is the KC thing is the KC thing.
The KC thing's a mixed bag. Who knows what's going to come from that. I like Kadarius Toney, but I understand the risk of it, and it's like again bear with me on a journey here, but would you be surprised if we all are excited about Sky Moore and Kadarius Toney again, and Richie James is like
if I'm gonna swing on a KC guy late, I'd just rather be Justin Ross.
Oh God, we were so different on that. I don't know.
We've always been different on that. We had the same discussion last year on the show when it came time,
when Justin Ross was getting hyped up.
Well,
I want it for him. I want it to happen.
I've been seduced by the camp videos.
I just don't know.
Couldn't help it.
They were doing it even before camp. Mahomes and Justin Ross were like putting out content just like all over the place.
Josh Palmer, if Mike Williams and Keenan Allen fall apart are options. I don't want to talk about this anymore. This is upsetting me.
All right, draft Puka Nacua. Let's get out of here.
let's end the show on a good note. That's it for tonight's show. If you were unfortunate enough to stay this far, we supremely apologize for putting you through those last 5 minutes. Don't blame me if you unsubscribe. Anyways, he is Jay Arsh. You can find him on Twitter at Jay Arsht. Just his name is spelled out like that. I am Sam Wagman. You can always find me on Twitter at Swagman95. And we will be back next week, as we always are. And we will see you guys on the flip side.